Well, how would you best describe your purpose in life?
It starts with this kind of like constant interrogation of like you asking yourself who you are, why am I here? And purpose requires unconventional methods, right? But we quite often build this very linear vision of like who we are and what we're supposed to be doing. But I think I looked at a lot of things. I was like, yo, this isn't going to be it. I could have done an engineering job and like, I think my life would have been predictable. It would have been fulfilling. Within purpose, you're going to feel fulfilled. You're going to have a lot of challenges. But then I think you also find a lot of peace knowing that you don't have to compare to anyone. Like I have friends that are, married and houses, even second homes. It's not about that race. It's run your own race. We can all be great in our own ways. And so I think that's very, very important to realize all the ways in which we're called to be great and to serve.
Welcome to Africa and Us. I'm your host, Nathan Araya. On today's show, we have Moyo Oyelola. Born in Nigeria, Moyo moved to Austin, Texas at the age of 7 with his family. After 3 months of attending the University of Texas, Moyo changed his major from engineering to advertising, where he now resides as a successful multimedia creative that tells stories through photography, film, and carpentry. I spoke with Moyo about his work through storytelling within the international Black African diaspora community, how to overcome rejection by channeling your energy in a productive direction, a life-changing experience in South Africa, and how he discovered his artistic voice, purpose, and fulfillment in his life. This is Africa in Us. Welcome everyone to Africa and Us. I'm your host Nathan Araya, and we're with Moyo Oyelola, a Nigerian-American multimedia creative and storyteller living in Austin, Texas. He tells stories through photography, film, and many different various amount of art forms. He also builds furniture. Moyo, thank you so much for being on the show today.
What's up?
What's going on, sir?
It's good. It's good to be here. It's always good to connect with peeps.
For sure, man. Appreciate you being here. So I'm interested in your story and all the great things that you've been able to do in your life. You just have such a certain level of authenticity in how you approach life and your art. And that's something that resonates with me and something that I definitely do appreciate.
Thanks, man.
So you came from Nigeria at the age of 7, and your parents, migrated here. Tell me a little bit about that experience and kind of how all of that started.
Yeah. The first story I have is it's about, I guess, a 3-year-old, which is me, having this wish and desire to come to America. And it was just kind of like a thing, right? It was just like I would see these images on TV of Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, Bill Clinton, American flag, WWE,
right?
All, a lot of entertainment type stuff. And it was like, yo, like that happens in America. I want to go there and I just want to be a part of it or something like that. So imagery was very important. Representation is also very important. My family always just kind of like, not laugh at it, but they were like, they'll call me like the American or something like that, right? And as like an encouragement, and I would just get excited about it. And fast forward to when I'm 7, a letter shows up in the mail from the US Embassy, tells my parents, hey, you have an interview on these dates, show up, and then, blah, blah, blah. My parents were kind of confused. But what happened was my uncle so there's a visa lottery system, and submitted our names and applied and then we were selected. And I remember, we went to Lagos. So we lived about an hour outside of Lagos. Went to Lagos early in the morning one day and did the interview at the embassy, and they said, congratulations, you have a visa. And you have like 3 months to like get yourself together and move.
Right.
Like back then it was 1996, not a lot of information about anything, right? The internet wasn't really around, and my parents, we sold everything. Like my parents were building a house at the time, and I think across Africa, people pay lump sum situations to build houses, not a 30-year mortgage.
Right.
So they were building a house, they sold everything, and kind of like, oh yeah, like we're going, not knowing if we're going to come back or like what it really meant, I think. But we're like, we're going. So I remember the days and weeks leading up to our departure, just like seeing family, lots of goodbyes and whatnot. I mean, we're a pretty strong family, right? Like we're always around each other and whatnot. So, and I would spend my summers in Lagos with my, like on both sides of the family, just being shuffled around. So it was just great, just growing up, man. And I remember the day we left, parents got me a green olive suit, show up in the airport looking dapper.
Came ready for the US of A.
Yeah. So, we said our goodbyes, but at 7, I didn't really know what emotions to process. It was just kind of a thing, right? And we got on a plane, flew to Amsterdam, flew to Minnesota, came to Austin, Texas, of all places, which is rare for a Nigerian family, just because Austin doesn't have a large Nigerian population. Houston and Dallas do, and New York and the East Coast. But my uncle lived here at the time because of his job, and we moved in with them in their 3-bedroom house, or not even a house, it was an apartment. And from there, we started our process of the American dream, American journey. My parents, they started working in a factory like the first week. Like that's what it was. It was, responsibilities came fast. This is America. Literally, this is so. In the very beginning, my dad started working at the convenience store right across Diamond Shamrock, Valero, whatever they're at now. And he did that for like 5 years. And my mom, started working in daycare, but she was also taking she was in nursing school. A year after, we had like my sister. So, it's like, family of 4.
There's a lot going on.
It's like my dad was working like 80 hours a week at the convenience store, like many of our parents, right? Making it all work. But it's incredible because like within a 3-year period, they bought a house. Granted, in America, you take out a mortgage and blah, 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 and that's how you do it, right? But like in 99, we moved into the suburbs.
Right.
Incredible.
In 3 years.
In 3 years. From like no credit, right, in the United States.
That's unbelievable.
Right? We lived in 2 apartments in the meantime, and that was that, and there was challenges, right? You have a newborn baby, you're far away from your family, right? Back home when I was born, like everyone was in town when I was born, right? Everyone comes to town and like they stay with you, your in-laws, your aunts, your sisters, your brothers, whatever. And so it's different when you're like a bit isolated, especially in Austin where there isn't a lot of family and whatnot. So, but fortunately, so a year after we came, right after my sister was born, another family from Nigeria, they had how many kids? They had 5 kids, moved to the States. 2 of them were close to my age. Mm-hmm. So that became like part of our extension of family, right?
Nice.
Of people who had similar experiences and who, not that we were like so far ahead, but like became like, seeing my dad and my parents and them interact was like this information of like, hey, this is happening. So my dad got a job at the state of Texas, and then their dad got a job at the state of Texas. Their mom's a teacher, my mom's a nurse. So very similar kind of backgrounds of just middle-class people. And together, they bought houses in the same neighborhood, literally 3 miles up the street from right here.
Man, that's amazing to see people grow in community and family, and all of that contribute to your growth too.
Yeah, just being bridges for one another, right? Support systems and whatnot. I mean, I grew up with these people.
Yeah.
I was over at their house every day in the summer, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, they're brothers to me, not just like family friends.
Yeah. So you grew up in that family, and then you managed to kind of go through the school system, and you're a very creative person, but you went to UT. You got accepted, and
the University of Texas, I must say.
Yeah. And you went in as an engineering major.
Yeah.
Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, we do say what starts here changes the world, but it only took 3 months for me to change my mind about that engineering degree.
So you changed your mind in 3 months.
Yeah. I couldn't jump ship any faster, man.
What happened?
It was the beginning of this questioning process that I think a lot of us, so the first kind of like 0 to 18 or whatever is just kind of autopilot, let's just say. You know, you go to school, you come home, you go to soccer practice, you do all these kind of things that are expected of you, right? Wake up this time. But college is a different experience, right? Because you're sending a bunch of young adults who don't really know too much about themselves. They don't really know how the world kind of works yet. And also, this is like before, like internet was around, but there wasn't a lot of information about stuff. Or rather, for me, in my experiences, there wasn't a lot of exposure. I have a great upbringing, but there wasn't a lot of exposure of what else was there. And so going into UT and making this decision to be an engineer and commit to this was like, yeah, sure, great. It wasn't forced. It was my choice.
So you made that choice. Your mom, your dad didn't make that choice.
Yeah, and they were cool. They were supportive of it because it was like prestigious enough.
It's the African dream.
It's like lawyer, doctor, engineer. You picked one of them. Clap, clap. We've done a great job.
Exactly.
He got good grades in high school. He played soccer. He was the captain.
Right.
Like everything was good. UT just won the national championship the year before. Like,
was that with Vince Young?
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that year.
With VY, baby.
Yeah, I remember that.
Smooth, man. Gliding into that end zone.
Yeah.
And there was like, yeah, like what else? What else for them? Like life was great. And so went to UT, had that experience. I was like, yo, this isn't, I just have no interest about this. It was like the first time where I was like, oh, what? Huh? I mean, I hit a wall. And it was like scary because it's like, whoa. It was like the first time where I wanted to do something. I was like, yo, like, I remember like summers before, I was like, I would write down a list like, oh, I want to buy a CD player. I want to do this, I want to do this. Oh, I want to buy this thing. And I would like, it would happen, right? But like, going to UT and saying you want to be an engineer, like, that's more than just a CD player. Right. That's a career choice.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a purposeful choice. And that was like, I think that was the issue there. I didn't realize at the point, but that was the issue there. So it became a lot of questioning and interrogating of like, what do I want to do? What do I want to be? What am I about? What am I about? I think that was like the first question. What am I about most immediately? Right. And so I had to kind of like be like, well, you're good with people and blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, philosophy. I was like, I don't really know what that means.
Right.
And then I was like, PR. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. PR. And learned a little bit more about it. I was like, interesting. Fortunately enough, at UT, PR and advertising, the curriculum is like 90% the same. And so you're forced to actually take this advertising class before you're able to apply for the transfer process. And I remember I took it advertising 318J. It was in Jester Auditorium. Dr. John Murphy, and the TA was Tammy Nguyen, which is a good friend of mine. And and it was like, oh, the summer before. So the summer before was like the World Cup.
Nice.
So that was cool. That was great. And also my friend gave me a bootleg version of Photoshop.
Okay. So got that bootleg friend. Everyone got one of those.
Everyone got one. The one that burned you the CDs, got you all the programs.
The movies.
They
got everything.
You always needed a hookup, man. Yeah. I ain't going to give his name away. He grew up like literally a mile away from here too. Yeah. But I remember just like making these posters and just getting lost in Photoshop, just enjoying that of like, hey, I have this idea for this thing. I would make it. I remember I threw a World Cup party at my house, and all my friends came over and we watched the game. It was France versus Italy, and I was going for France because I'm such a big Zinedine Zidane fan. I cried at that game. My friends saw me cry.
I remember that game.
And, obviously he has his mishaps because all geniuses are flawed, right? At the end of the day.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And whatnot. But I made this big poster for it. It was like France versus Italy. I designed all this stuff. It was cool. So I just getting lost in Photoshop was amazing, man. I was like, I really enjoy that. So in this advertising class, we had to like make a cereal. And I made the cereal and designed the packaging and the box and the name. I was like, this is cool. I was like, oh, wait, there companies exist that do this. And then I started learning about campaigns, right? Volkswagen campaigns and the Coca-Cola ads and all these things. I got really immersed in it. I was like, these are created, right? Like commercials, these are ideas. And I have ideas. But no one really said, hey, young child, you have ideas. You should explore fine arts, or you should explore even advertising, or you should explore all these other things, industrial design, whatever. I love to tinker with stuff. So in the past I took wood shop classes in middle school. So, and in high school. So I got comfortable with this like rotating saw that can end your life in 2 seconds, like being inches away from my face. I got very comfortable with that and whatnot. So, and like any other kid growing up in maybe like Milwaukee or Texas or whatever, like their grandfather probably taught them that. Like my grandfather didn't teach me that necessarily. That's fine. But, the education system taught me that, and I got comfortable with that, and it opened up my world to like what else could be. And then I also realized a lot of my high school projects, I was doing the most. Like I was staying up until 1, 2, 3, which was, 1 o'clock was like deep into the night. I remember the first time I stayed up until 1 was when my dad and I were like building this like computer table for our compact computer desk.
Yeah.
And my dad couldn't figure it out. So you can tell I'm the real handy one in the family. Right. My dad couldn't really figure it out. And I was like, nah, Dad, we got to stay up and do this. It was like 1 o'clock. I was like, yo, this is deep. But with my other projects, it was effortless. I was tired, but mentally not tired. I wanted to keep going. Although my body was like, yeah, you should go to bed. And I would keep pushing. And I remember this one French project we had to do in French class where we had to build a house and label it in high school, and everyone got like construction paper, cut it all up, built their walls and did that. Moi, on the other hand, extra, went to like Hobby Lobby, bought a bunch of balsa wood and like built a 2-story house with steps.
That's awesome.
Used like clay for like the sink, the tub. It was like 3 bedrooms, living room, washer and dryer. Like, did the most. I show up with this thing, everyone's just like, bro, really? Got 100 on it.
Yeah, I bet you did.
I got 100 on it. Like straightforward. And, and also reminded me of like, I had this, like, I remember my US history class, it was like it was AP US history, and we're all like doing terrible in that class. Like we're all failing our tests. But I think teachers are so important, because a great teacher knows how to like understands like, hey, how to actually teach and how to foster a learning environment for students, right? And Miss Algermis Jane Algermis, and we talk every now and then when she like sends me a message, and she's like, these kids are gonna like fail, so I need to do something different. So she swapped over to like multimedia projects. And at the time, there was like, I remember like for me, I had like a 4 or 5 megapixel camera that my dad had bought. It was like a $600 Canon camera. And then like I, would use it for stuff, for projects. I would take it on soccer trips and whatnot. And, and then she's like, okay, cool. I remember the first project was like, we had to recreate American history to, We Didn't Start This Fire by, I forgot the guy, but he's not Bruce Springsteen. It's like one of these, Bob Dylan, one of these like classic American guys, whatever. And, we like did the thing, recorded the song, like, just like how we were recording all this. But, obviously we couldn't afford great equipment back then. We're just whatever we had, whatever somebody had.
Yeah.
And one, we had to make a comic book. Another, we had to make a video on American history. So all these multimedia things that like became so much more profound later on, right? That was a seed in the ground, right?
I love those moments, because there's not an amount of money or resources that you can place on the certain things that are in you and that you do naturally.
Yep.
And I love how you were self-aware about that. You got lost in things that were fascinating to you. And it was effortless.
So fascinating. And as we further along in the information age, the information was more available on how to do it, right? Because, before, cameras were thousands of dollars and not a couple of $100, right? And so for you to take something digital and print it and put it on the computer and then print it, that process was a lot shorter than before. It was great.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and I think I just had to like do a lot of soul searching, just look back at all those things and be like, what were they about? What were they about? And I'm like, oh, I need to like water this ground right here in front of me. This is where I need to, this spot right here is where I need to grow and water. And so I think I started doing that a lot, you know, eventually bought like a DSLR camera, which DSLRs were a new thing, right? You know, and 600, like, no, at first I bought these, I like point and shoot cameras.
Right.
And I remember you can like change the to where it's only just the red filter, where it'd be black and white, red only or blue only. Man, that was the ish, bruh. Like I would show all the parties. I'll be the one taking pics, posting them on the gram, or I'm not before the gram.
Before the gram. Yeah.
Before the gram, ladies and gentlemen. Posting them and making all these albums in Facebook. I mean, it's stuff you look back on and you're like, oh my gosh. But that was part of the development process, you know? And like, you know, kids nowadays have more information to where like they can start beyond that. You know what I mean? Just 'cause they can look at something on the gram or wherever and be like, this is the baseline I'm going to start at. And that's kind of cool. But that was my baseline. And that was where I was starting from.
So you graduated with which degree?
With a degree in advertising.
In advertising.
Yeah.
And then you go back home to live with your mom and dad.
Real talk. Yeah, man.
So what did they think of that? And were they pushing you to get a job? What was going on in the house?
So I wanted to do nothing, absolutely nothing. Right when I was done, I was like,
beautiful.
Because I realized that we commit ourselves to these things, but we're never really sure what we're committing to. And I didn't really know how to have a vision, what vision meant at that point. And I was like, yes, I guess the natural thing. And also for me, I also realized that advertising was cool. It was a great experience. And UT has like the number 1 or 2, whatever advertising program in the country. So it's a great program. Like I didn't even know. Like, so then I was like, okay, cool. So decisions in life should not be taken lightly was what I learned from my college experience. And I had a great college experience, although like, you know, academically, I wasn't like the greatest student, but hey, I got a degree.
You got that degree.
4 years, baby.
Yeah. And 4 years.
Had to take some classes over again.
Hey, we all.
But here I am. And I was like, okay, cool. Like decisions should not be taken lightly. Like, how do you really commit to something? How do you start having a vision? Which are not questions what I had at the time, but it was like things that I was like, okay, let me just not do this because it's the natural thing. But regardless, my dad works at the state, so I ended up getting a job at the state of Texas doing like data entry, data processing at the Health and Human Services. Soul crushing.
But an artist doing data processing.
Woo, boy.
That sounds like torture.
Screen after screen, entering the data, next.
Sheesh.
Boy. Yeah. And then, but I was like, you know, it was money. It was more money than a college student makes, right? So it was something. You know, bought computers, started buying gear, whatnot. So I was like, you know, doing the freelance thing outside of that, right? Trying to get involved somewhere. Started joining like little startups that I probably shouldn't have joined, but hey, they got you know, it was like getting my feet wet. It was experimenting. That's what I was doing. A lot of that. And I was just hungry for growth, right? And hungry to like do something.
And I love that about you because many of us have this traditional way of thinking. You know, you go to school to get a degree, you get a degree to get a job, you get a job to maybe get a family one day, and then in this process of life. But the way you see life is what interests me the most about you. The way you approach projects, the way you approach art, you know, it's very unconventional. And it seems like during that time of coming out of school, a lot of development happened for you to be able to say, I am not going to work to create something that's for someone else's vision. I'm going to work to create something with the vision that I have. And it seems like the things that you've created have opened doors for you because you have not been able to wait as much, you know, for someone to open a door for you.
Yeah, because I think I didn't compromise my own truth in the process.
Right.
I let me develop and I let my experiences come with me on those things. And I think that's important. You know, the travels, the conversations, the experiments, the failures or the lessons, whatever. Like I try to bring that as much as possible with me. And so that's like so important in creating, I guess, an authenticity of who I am and what I am or whatever. And not, you know, having to have any contention around that. And it might not move at the speed of what your other friends might be doing or whatever, but just kind of really taking time to say like, well, there's the surface, but then there's also development happens at the root. Right. And that was so important for me to make sure that there was development happening at the root. Not really knowingly, right? I can't be like, oh yeah, like this is what I'm doing. Not knowing. I was like, I just want to try a bunch of different things. I just want to go over there. I just want to go over there. I just want to go there. And then it's like, cool. Then you start to like, life lessons are happening.
Right.
Experiences are happening. Oh yeah, I did that one thing, but this is how it turned out. Maybe I should try it differently. Or maybe I should like start doing this kind of artwork now. And there's like my season of this and that, right?
Right. And speaking of traveling, and you've been able to kind of go around and do a lot of different cool things all over the world. You were in a show called Arts in Context. Episode was called Home, that explored diaspora life. So we featured South Africa, Austin, Brazil, Nicaragua, and talked about many different types of experience, and it showcased you. And this show has been, shown all over the world, and it's out there right now. So I was excited to kind of watch that, before, kind of speaking with you. Tell me a little bit about how that experience happened and how you were featured in there, and you're traveling and you're doing your art, your work.
Yeah, there's like a million steps, right? Before that show aired. But, Mario Troncoso, which is a great friend today of mine, the director, he reached out to me. We met over coffee, but prior to that, we were friends on Facebook. And prior to that, I think we had worked in the same co-working space for a while. And this co-working space was a co-working space that I joined when it was like still early on, that a friend of mine, one of my really great friends and later on startup, like co-founders, whatever, started, right? Bunch of young, once again, this is like wanting to learn and wanting to discover new things, right? And he started this. It was just a bunch of young, scrappy 20-something-year-olds who didn't want to go get a 9-to-5, let's be honest, and wanted to like build a startup because it was the hottest, greatest thing to do, right? Because we all saw how companies were being bought or whatever. But they started this project, and I started helping with design, and I started helping with the space simultaneously, and that was important, right? Places where people can connect, physical space where people can connect and mix one another. So through it, Mario found out about me, and he found out about my project called Distant Relatives that I do with a good friend and brother of mine, Hakeem Adewumi, who's currently in South Africa right now, doing his Fulbright. So shout out to those academics and creatives doing their thing.
And tell us about Distant Relatives too.
Yeah. So Distant Relatives is a collaborative exhibit on the African diaspora. We explore a lot of notions and themes, specifically home, migration, community, past, present, future, Blackness, identity. Who are we? What are we? What can we be? Right? All those things. And it really started when first Hakeem and I met, and he went to UT after I did, so we didn't really meet at UT, but he was like, after he was like about to be done, and I was already, out doing my thing, and so we met and connected. I was like, cool, you're a photographer and all that stuff. So we just kind of like, hey, like, yo, let's go shoot something together. So we'll go shoot something together. And that was like the beginning of just like a very great collaborative, process for both him and I. So, and at the time where we met, I had already gone to South Africa, and I think stepping back, also had gone to Nigeria after not going in 10 years to go visit family, and then also went to like Kenya. So these kind of
nice
high touch points with the motherland within like a 2-year period, right? And he went to Nicaragua and Brazil for study abroad stuff. So, places where Black people are very prominent and present. And just kind of observing and looking at our bodies of work, like our archives of photos that we took on trips. We're like, yo, like you got these Black boys running around Brazil, and I got these Black boys running around Kenya or South Africa or Nigeria playing soccer. And a lot of times when I was traveling, man, I'll just be on these trips and I was like, man, this person looks exactly like my other friend from, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, man, these people are like related. They have to be related. They have to be distant relatives of some sorts, right? And at the time the album Distant Relatives came out, Nas and Damian Marley.
Yeah.
Like, talk about somebody putting out, like, I don't think it won a Grammy or any awards, but like, talk about somebody putting out a body of work that transformed somebody, me, right, to then go create something else. And it was just so influential. My favorite song on that album was Patience, which is always something that was also very big for me, just like patience and trust the process, but also be patient as well. So we did our first gallery, and the first gallery was just pictures that I had taken on my camera that I bought because I went to South Africa, which was like this, that really started a lot of things. Because for me, South Africa was this big distant dream that I can imagine happening, and then it happened. Like, I had the money to go and I went. That was after the startup stuff. Came back to Austin, dejected, and like, I was like, dang, like nothing's going well, you know, and met this group of young African leaders that were so talented. I was like, oh my gosh, the dots are right there in front of me. I actually know someone from Kenya, Florence. We stayed with her when I went to Kenya, right? And there's like, you know, the South Africans, you know, Mots and Faith and all these other, you know, like really cool people that are like friends of mine and whatnot. They were the dots. They represent information. And that's often what's missing in our community, right, of people of color and being Black, is information about what we can be career-wise or what we can do, and like making sure we extend it beyond the limitations that is often placed around us, right, from media and whatnot, and even what we do to ourselves. Quite often, a lot of it comes from ourselves, right? So that was like, man, the dots are there, and I just got to go. And so, but in realizing that, we're like, you know, naturally we just took photos, and so we had a wealth of photos that we decided we were going to be vulnerable about, and like not knowing how to do a gallery. And a friend of mine was like, hey, I'm moving out, and if you want to have the space for a day, you can have the space for a day to do a show. I was like, yo, what? How? I went to Akeem, was like, look, this is what my friend's saying. I don't know about this, whatever. But he's like, look, man, we just got to do it. I was like, all right. We picked a date. It was Father's Day, like 4 years ago or something.
That's
like that.
cool.
And we did it. Like, did we know what we're doing? No, but we did it. You pick a date, you send out invites. People were like, yo, dope, all right. Especially in Austin, Texas, where, you know, it's an artsy town, but, you know,
right,
question marks, asterisks, right? And then in terms of community of color, like, what does that really mean, right? So not a lot of, you wouldn't really go to a show and see people that look like you or are like you, and that was so important. So we were trying to address a need within our community. That was like the big thing, trying to find purpose within our work, and realizing that we had all the parts and pieces just sitting there in hard drives already. Quite often, a lot of what we're looking for is right in front of us, but we complicate it sometimes. We're like, oh no, and like, I don't know how to do it, blah, blah, blah. So we did it. People came, and it was a full-on experience. Like, you know, we did music, we did food. We told stories about these pictures. We connected them. You know, we were connecting a lot of dots, you know, whether it was like things that were related to like the civil rights movement, or things that were related to the information gap that exists within our communities, right? Like access to the internet and whatnot. Like, we talked about that, and we're making those connections. And then people that had never gone out of the country or whatever, were starting to see Blackness on a different level, right? I mean, it wasn't 2 million people. It was like 200 people came, and that was great.
That's huge.
Like, that was
for your first gallery.
That was good. I think that was, you know, the start of just addressing something with your body of work and starting to identify voice within that, you know?
How important is information and representation in our community?
You know, earlier I was saying, like, you know, nothing's ever 100%, but this is 1,000%.
Yeah.
It's so important. That's why I'm not going to say that's why I'm here, but it's important. That's why I'm here. It's being able to see myself and seeing what else I can be. Like, I didn't have a lot of examples of like creatives or artists or whatever, right? And right now, at this very moment, I've talked about this so many times this week. My older cousin moved to Canada with her daughters and the whole family, and so I think about their experience. Now it's like, 2018, information is different. And there's a creative in the family,
Right.
And 10 years from now, these kids are going to college. They're like, hey, uncle, like, I don't know what I want to be. I'd be like, hey, you're really good at this thing. Hopefully I can be the one that. And I know that they might have their boundaries with their parents,
Right.
who might want them to be these certain things. But hopefully, if their parents could be more open to see like, this is what's possible. So I don't want to limit how I raise my child. They could be really successful doing whatever. And it's fine if that child ultimately decides they want to be a lawyer, doctor, engineer. Fine, great. Let them make that decision. And then let them also understand what it means. Right? So, and if they want to be a photographer, great, whatever, or artist, whatever, great. They have an example. So I think it's by providing a spectrum. That's what information does, at the end of the day. And experience and exposure does, right? It shows people ideas of like who they can be and what they're not, because you just don't know. I didn't know. Like, my parents went to college in a different time, in a different country, in a different space. So for them, like, they just didn't know that process.
Right.
Right? They're great parents. They're phenomenal.
Right.
They did a good job,
Yeah, man. I definitely relate to that as well. And one thing that you did say, and I was actually looking at this and from the show, is and I quote, we don't venture past what we know. We aren't curious enough. We don't take the risk. We don't go beyond what we are capable of.
Yeah.
When did this realization hit home for you?
South Africa trip, man. South Africa trip was such a big catalyst for so much, because I think at that point I was very limited in my thinking of myself. And I remember, I started talking about when I was 3. I had this idea of like going to the United States. I was like a 3-year-old, wished that and manifested it at age 7. I was like, so if I have this desire to want to learn, travel, be creative, soak up experiences, then what's holding me back? And the great thing that happened that summer, where I came back from San Francisco after doing startup stuff, and it was kind of like a dejected, right? Just like low point. I mean, we weren't paying ourselves. There was like 8 of us living in a 1-bedroom.
Wow. In
San Francisco, $3,000 1-bedroom. Yo, we even rented our floor to one of our friends. We're like, yo, fam. And
because he rented a floor?
Yeah, man.
That's some hard times right there.
Because one, it was cheaper for him too.
Oh,
because he was paying like $2,000 for a 1-bedroom situation. And he was like making his transition back to come back to Texas, to Dallas. And then, so it was like cheaper for him to pay $800 to be on a floor. You know what I mean?
That's
and
awesome.
Not $2,000. And so, but anyway, so it was like a hard period, right? Like financially, I was just like, I couldn't fathom like, even buy a ticket to like travel the world, anywhere in the world. And these desires were just growing and growing and growing. But the great thing that happened was the YALI program, the Young African Leadership Institute, where it was, so President Obama started the thing, and basically it was 500 young African leaders came over to the United States to, they were housed in different schools and campuses, and they were like, it ranged from like 20 something to 40. So,
right.
And that was like the missing piece, man. It's like, yo, they're right there. These people that I'm like looking for, cause like going to high school, it was very diverse, whatnot. College was cool because it was, UT is a big school, and so there's a lot of Africans. So I'm meeting like, other Ethiopian kids and other like Kenyans and other, Uganda and people, and international students and people who, who are first, second generation, grew up here and stuff like that. So I'm meeting all these people. It was like really great. We're vibing to music. I was in African Student Association at UT, so it was really cool. And that was a great way for me to have my creative outlets, because I was making videos and photos and all that stuff for the culture, right?
Nice.
So that was cool. But when you're like, after you're done with that, like you kind of like adulting is hard in general, right? Because you got to make new friends and you got to have new circles and all that stuff. So But anyways, I just had this strong desire for the diaspora, for home, not just Nigeria, but for home, you know. And meeting someone from Kenya that I actually went and stayed with, Florence, right, was like, that was incredible. Like I said, those were the dots that were just presenting themselves in front of me. And so that was very transformative. So so now it's about exploring beyond your 4 blocks, right, in your neighborhood, and going out there to go see it for yourself and not to make assumptions, right? And it's a way of creating empathy and sympathy and really getting to understand humanity, understand how people live, their challenges, their day-to-day, their hopes, their dreams, you know, what they're trying to do, the difficulties, and appreciate it, and appreciate where we're all coming from. We all come from a different baseline.
Right. So it seems like there was a lot of things that contributed to your voice.
Yeah, man.
Well, how would you best describe your purpose in life and purpose in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with this kind of like constant interrogation of like you asking yourself who you are, why am I here, questioning, and purpose requires unconventional methods, right? Because we build up this very linear, it's easy to build up, and everyone has their place of, everyone's built differently too, but we quite often build this very linear vision of like who we are and what we're supposed to be doing and blah, 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 blah. And then you get the gold watch, right?
Right.
But I think I looked at a lot of things. I was like, yo, this isn't going to be it. I could have done an engineering job, and like, I think my life would have been predictable. It would have been fulfilling. So purpose has to do within purpose, you're going to feel fulfilled. I think
Right.
those are the ways you start to know. You're going to have a lot of challenges. But then I think you also find a lot of peace knowing that you don't have to compare to anyone. It's not about, like, I have friends that are, you know, married and houses and second homes, whatever. It's not about that race. It's run your own race, right? We can all be great in our own ways. Usain Bolt's a great athlete. Michael Phelps is a great athlete, right? You can look at them like, great. They look great, but one gets in the pool and one gets on a track. Michael Phelps can maybe run fast, but you can't run as fast as Usain Bolt. So everyone has their purpose and things that they're supposed to fulfill to be great at, right? And so I think that's very, very important to realize in this art, all the ways in which we're called to be great, right? And to serve, right? And so it's this constant interrogation of it. And I think in realizing that I'm an artist, which was, I just didn't want to own it. The fact that I was an artist, I was a creative, right? So it was like hard. I was like, I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah.
An artist? What? No, those people that's reserved for something else. I was limiting myself in that, right? And I was limiting it. And so I think in learning to be vulnerable, going to South Africa, learning to be vulnerable, showing up. Just knowing I'm like, look, I'm just going to go and just like see what happens and be fine, not knowing, not having everything planned. And I'm more that kind of person, right? Realizing how do I operate, right? It's kind of like, I know this is a car, but like really how this car does, how all the parts and pieces and the whistles come together. And like, is this car built for this track or is it built for like climbing mountains and driving up the hills or something like that? So figuring out how you operate, that was like an important thing.
Yeah.
And that requires questioning a lot of things.
Right. And you talk a lot about vulnerability. Was there any particular moments through traveling or conversations that allowed you to feel comfortable in your own skin and be able to say that I'm going to create art that's a reflection of who I am, regardless of how the public may perceive it? It takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable these days. And many of us are afraid because we hide behind social media, likes, we hide behind filters. It's very difficult for people these days to be their authentic, true selves. How have you been able to navigate that?
You know, I think our most vulnerable moments happen in real life, like in conversations like this. I think it's learning to be real with one another, right? And I think that happens in conversations here in your home or across the world when you're just dealing with another human being that has hope, fears, and dreams and goals. And so I think the process of traveling around the world was just kind of like a vulnerable thing. Just be like, yeah, I'm just going to show up and see what happens. And then within my art, it's like, yeah, I'm just going to like put up this work, see what happens, right? And being comfortable with that. Some people will get it, some people won't. Maybe it's not my job to like satisfy every single person,
Right.
And maybe it's like, cool, maybe all of this was to inspire a few kids, and that's it. All right, cool. Like, how do you define success, right? What's success? So, and I think part of that also, it's realizing it's not about like millions and millions of people. It's like it's taking one life, one individual at a time, and then transforming that, and hopefully then they go on and transform other lives as well. Because we all have obstacles and barriers that we're all trying to overcome, and it's important to be an example for that. So quite often that became kind of like my way towards vulnerability was like, it's not about me. It's for someone else.
And it's not about chasing perfection.
Yeah, man.
I remember we were just talking about that,
Yeah.
and you were mentioning an example with a bookshelf that you just set up.
So yeah, I'm a 70%er. People are gonna be like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I'm a 70%er, meaning, yeah, honestly, I do a lot of things just to 70%. Because we're never 100%.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
Someone could say like, are you with me? And everyone's like, yeah, I'm with you 120%. But we're never 100%. Because we're always trying to, we're piecing it all together, trying to make a whole out of something that we don't even understand yet, ourselves. And so it's kind of like a philosophy or an approach that bleeds over into my work of just like being a 70%er, not out of laziness, but out of just kind of like, hey, I don't want to assume I know everything. So sometimes, like in the case of the bookshelf, like I didn't sand it. I didn't like, I was like, okay, cool. Look, let me just have a structure that holds, and a structure that can hold books. Because guess what? These books are on the floor right now, and they're like disturbing my process of creating or my office workspace or whatever. And I just need to put them in this bookshelf and put these records in there and just like have it just be neatly organized in something. That was like my first thing that I'm solving for. So it's kind of also realizing what's the first thing you need to solve for, right? And not to complicate it. Because I'm also realizing like, what does it take? What's it going to take to be 100? If you can, even if 100 was correct, was even approachable. It's going to take a lot of time and energy. And then you have to know like what's worth fighting for, what's not worth fighting for, And so in like kind of like some of my work and my art and what I'm building, I'm like, okay, cool, great. It's at 70%.
Right.
It doesn't mean I'm less committed. All it means is like I am saying there's 99% of me at best, and I'm gonna divide that up into weights, right? And right now, you might have 30% of me or something like that, or I'm gonna commit that to this because there's always multiple things that are going on, right? Emotionally, mentally, physically, even, right? Like, so we have to evaluate all that and know how to like shift it and prioritize things. And so that's what a lot of people don't really consider.
Right.
So that's why I'm a 70%er.
Yeah. And I love the idea. I mean, because many of us struggle with perfection, that it paralyzes us and we're not able to solve today's problems with what we have, with who we are, because we are so constantly trying to chase this idea of perfection for people's perception, right?
Yeah. You miss out on being present quite often with that. And I was telling you about how I like phone calls, right? Especially in this digital media age and all that stuff. Everyone wants to like look busy because we're sending 50 emails and like wait, I'll get to you in a second. You know what I mean? Like typing away, right? But I like phone calls because if I pick up the phone, I'm present. I am answering you. Because like if you send me a text, I might be like in the middle of some artsy thing, right? And I'm like trying to figure that out, and like my hands are legitimately full, right? And you don't have my attention. Why do you assume you have my attention just because you sent an email or text? And we're so pressured to like respond back within 2 seconds, right? And like it's so precious. Like they didn't respond back. Like what? Like that we needed that answer. Whatever. Right? I mean, I understand it in certain cases. I don't want to dismiss all this, but there's just so much pressure. I'm like, my grandfather didn't have to grow up in that, in that age. You know?
Yeah.
My grandfather dealt with what was in front of him. I'm not saying that was also good or either, because sometimes you avoid certain things too.
Yeah.
Completely.
True.
You know, but there's just so much pressure for us to like multitask and do this. So I don't think I need to multitask. I just shift my intention and focus onto different things.
Makes sense.
I'm always working on like 50 million different things at a time. And that's fine, right? I think, you know, look at like people like Da Vinci or whatever. At the time of his death, they found like a bunch of artwork and stuff he was working on. And most of us would be like, oh man, that was complete. Like, what were we even talking about? That was complete. But for him, he was like, nah, this is still a work in progress, because he knew where he was going with it. Right. And he was like, oh, okay. And sometimes, yeah, we complicate it, right? Something that's done is done and whatnot. We overdo it. But like, he knew where he was going with it. So that's kind of beautiful. And yeah. And I kind of, I want to live like that, to where I can be present doing the things that I really want.
Yeah. So you're about to hit 30.
Oof. Yeah, man. I'm excited, actually.
About to hit 30 this year. So what are a few things that you've learned in your 20s living life in such an unconventional way?
Woo, the roaring 20s, man. And what a roar it was. So yeah, I've been reflecting on that a lot. I was like what are my 20s about? And I think 20s was about experimenting a ton and learning a ton. And that's really a lifelong thing. And coming into like this year, and not just for this year, only moving forward, is like owning my own truth. And that way I don't really compromise what I'm doing as much as possible. I try not to, right? So learning a lot was so important. I mean, building furniture, painting, photography, videos, whatever, startups, this and that, jobs, whatever. That was that. Because like I said, like in it, I'm trying to find my voice, and also not to keep up with a race, right? Because, like I said, sometimes life can be very linear. This weekend I just celebrated friends that got married. Hey, because for them it was their time. It was, and that's what they did. And so for me, I want to make sure that I know myself, and I'm always going to be trying to figure out myself, because times will change.
Right.
Responsibilities, the world changes.
Right.
So evolution happens. We need to evolve otherwise, so I want to make sure that there's certain things that I've built in that are that help me navigate my way in the world when things change. The seas get rougher and then they calm down and whatnot. So, and I want to be, like I said, I want to be present. Like I want to be present when I make a decision to get married and have a wife and have kids and things like that. I want to be very present with that. So those are things I don't take lightly. Right. And then like the things I want to pursue and bring to life. Right. So a lot of my 20s were like that, and they're exciting, very exciting. I learned a lot, man.
Yeah.
Went to a lot of places too.
Yeah.
Learned a lot. Saw humanity. I'm still trying to look at humanity and observe it. Where people are coming from, where they're going. And then it's layered in so many things: geography, climate, politics, socioeconomics, race, gender, religion. So many things, man. So we're complicated people.
Right.
Yeah. So another thing that I've learned in my 20s, with so much going on, so much noise, and and in my pursuit of really trying to seek meaningful relationship, is with like the gram's cool and all. I mean, that's why you and I are here, because that's where we found each other, I guess. But you can have a lot of people in the room, but really, who's in your corner, man? Because quite often we try to get everyone involved in our project, but everyone's in a different time, different space. There's things that they're dealing with, and so it's part of just having this very natural workflow and connection with people. And there's seasons to things, right? We want it now or yesterday or whatever, and it has to happen and blah, blah, blah. But, sometimes it's like you have to figure out how to best use your time, your energy, and like, okay, cool. And there's no problem in like sometimes putting something on a shelf, right? All these Hollywood people and stars, or whatever, people write movie scripts and whatever, and they're like, okay, blah blah blah, and it gets put away, and then like something happens to where it gets brought off the shelves, right? I mean, if you look at like anyone that's created anything that we now know or celebrate, you should really go study that process of how that thing came to be. Origins are like another big theme of me. So like in that way, you start to see like, wow, it wasn't linear. It wasn't like they just woke up and like, I'm going to paint the Mona Lisa, and the Mona Lisa will come and exist, and it will be the greatest painting known in the world, where people will line up in this French museum and try to see this tiny picture and take a picture of it on these things. Like Leonardo da Vinci didn't say that, right? So patience in the process is so important, right? And it's fine if people don't want to work with you. It's fine.
I mean, that's a real truth. People take that to the heart, right?
People get sensitive, man.
They feels,
right? And and I can have a 18-year-old or somebody come to me and be like, hey, blah blah blah, I'm excited about this thing. I'm like, hey, cool, great. And I think the thing is like, I might not have the time to actually foster you and your time and energy. And like, I think our goal is to make sure we're not super dismissive about people, to be like, whatever. And like, and to have ill wishes, right? They'd be like, hey, look, I can't, I don't, like, there's so many things I'm juggling, because remember, I'm not 100%. I'm juggling everything. Right. There's this and this and this and this. And like, I just don't even know how to even best help you right now, but I can wish you well, or I can say, hey, here's some things to consider. Or maybe in another season, say things happen with love and relationships, I
Exactly.
mean, there's seasons for that. So like, you can look at that. So it's like, hopefully you can be at better peace. It doesn't mean people don't want you to succeed. And you shouldn't harbor that as like, oh man, the world's against me, and ain't nobody trying to F with me. Right? That mentality, that's fine. So figure out how to channel that energy into something a bit more productive, right? Or just find the other people that can help you be that bridge or whatnot. Or even just have a better ask. And sometimes you are not as well developed to even know how to ask, or even to just articulate your ideas. Because I know who I was a few years ago to who I am right now, completely different, right? In like a mental state. But I think my purpose is still the same at the end of the day. But like, and the way I would articulate stuff, or even my ability to even do this podcast right now, it would have been very different. I mean, I really don't, and people that know me that like, I only really talk when I'm excited about something, genuinely excited about something. It's kind of a way of just like, I only talk when I feel like I have something meaningful to say. Not to be like, oh, I'm profound or whatever. Right. It's just like, look, I don't know. So I'm not going to say anything. Maybe I can, maybe because I'm trying to internalize how to make it into a body of work, right? Color palettes, things like that. But right now I just don't know, so.
And it's okay to be that way.
It's okay, man. It's okay. Like I said, another thing I think that I mentioned was we have to be like, not necessarily complacent, but like we have to be fulfilled knowing that some of the things that we're doing in this life isn't for us to even see right now. What does sacrifice really mean, right? At the end of the day. Because it's like maybe we're meant to be just be the wedge that keeps the door open for some other generations to come, right? I mean, yeah, accolades are cool, right? And whatnot, and being recognized is cool and whatnot, but sometimes just being an example, or just like your process becomes like your legacy, the way you live, right? People like, what happened when you fell? That's what I want to know. Like, not just when my grandfather succeeded. What happened when he fell, right? And time, everything's always evolving, so nothing's ever permanent, right? So seasons will come where everything in your life is like perfect. You're like, oh my gosh, money in the bank. Woo. or like, right. Cool, like, look at my loving wife or my kids, blah blah blah. But life is, man, unpredictable. Yeah. So it's like a way of just not saying like, oh, anticipating danger or anything like that, but like being at peace, knowing that like what is fulfillment, right? And being fulfilled in those things and not in material things and whatnot. So yeah, here I am.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Collectively, here we are. And words of affirmation is also another thing, right?
Very true.
It's like, oh, what we're trying to do is like, no, what I'm doing is, it might not be at the level that you desire, but what I'm doing is you're doing it. You're chipping away at something.
I remember when I was in LA and I had a good friend of mine that came in and he was doing a shoot for Trey Songz, right? So, yeah, Mr. Yeah. So I was on set just helping him out, right?
Yeah.
And we're looking at all these lights, these cameras, and everything that went into this $1 million production or whatever X amount of dollars it cost to do what it was. I remember speaking with him, and we were discussing that the things we were doing on that X amount of dollars studio were things we were already doing in college in the dorms. And we had this surreal experience saying that, wow, all those moments in college when we had the little lamp and we were making like music videos and we had the little small cameras, those makeshift, all of that paved the way for us to be in Hollywood to shoot that music video for Trey Songz. And we were literally just remembering, we had a moment where we just paused and we looked at this and we said, these people are no different than us. And we're in LA and he's from Corpus Christi. I'm from Garland, Texas. And I remember that moment being surreal and being a reminder that I can do just as much as anybody that's there. And not on a cocky tip, but it's literally just saying that, hey, there's value in my perspective. There's value in my skill set.
You have a story. We all have a story, right? And that's the thing. You come from somewhere, your experiences, right? And your ability to learn and grow, like, cool. And that's so important, right? Once again, representation, because now you're an example for somebody else to see. Because it's one thing when like your brother or your cousin or someone younger sees it, like, wow, it's transformative.
It is.
It's such an early age.
It is.
I look at my cousins and like the younger one, I'm like, what they see me do is transformative. It really is. And it's, you were influencing them and whatnot. Obviously there's bad influences and whatnot.
Right.
But I was like, it's with a sense of pride and responsibility that I now do what I do because of like them. Right. And it's like, I think one of the values I feel like America lacks a lot of kind of very communal values. Right. Like where we're from, like, yo, you know your neighbors, you know everyone. A lot of it is like survival mechanisms, things like that. Right. Because people have to pull together. But I think it's like if we kind of all transform ourselves to thinking about like how like my neighbors' kids are also my kids. Even if I'm not a parent, but like the way I act and the way I conduct is a sense of obligation or responsibility in like what values in society. I think that's important. And I think the more of us like should be that. We should at least start there. Just being like, question that first. Maybe question what I just said for your own self too. You can agree, you cannot agree. But I think about that. What are our values, man? Whatever you like pulling forward to. Of course, we're going to be in conflict. There's things we're not going to agree on everything. But like, try to think about like earlier, you know, I was with a new friend who I told you a story earlier about who I connected with on the gram as well.
Oh, yeah.
So we grabbed coffee and he just moved to Austin. And so, you know, he was kind of talking about how like, you know, back then the neighborhood kids would like run around and one day they like beat up my brother and things like that. It's like, you know, and then one day he like threw a rock, you know, and hit some dog. And it's like, and he's from Antigua. Like 2 seconds later, the neighbor like showed up. He was like, told on him. Like, it's like communal, like, hey, like, I'm gonna discipline your kids. That kind of thing. Not that I'm about to go like
go ham on these kids
or whatnot. But I think there's kind of like just responsibility towards your community. And then you can start to look at like, well, what does that mean on a national level on here in Austin? And then we start to zoom out like now, like what does that really mean?
Yeah.
Right. And part of it's also just kind of like develop this form of empathy as well to understand where people are coming from and certain things. Right.
And I think that's what makes your art and your work so authentic, because you are a person that is seeking after experiences and not just waiting for an experience to happen to you. And it's coming from an organic way through a conversation, through a phone call, you know, through life. Even I remember just speaking with you, and you were, you know, and I was asking just earlier, I was like, you know, so what, you know, what's now for you, which I want to ask again so people know, but you know, you really do thrive on weddings, friendships,
yeah.
you know, the events, you know, like that are just quality relationships.
Yeah.
And I love that about you, because many of us, if I ask people like what's now, they're sounding off their accolades and, you know, what they have to do. But you are a person that's constantly in the present and really thrive on authentic relationships.
Yeah. They mean a lot. I think loneliness happens in so many ways in the world. You can have all the Grammys and all of this, all these accolades and all that. And like, you know, obviously you have celebrities and people that have fame, right? That have their internal struggles and things like that, which, you know, May was, you know, Mental Awareness Month, right?
Yep,
so that was a big deal. Shout out to my friends that are in that world, which is something that's also taboo within our community.
Right.
We don't talk about, right?
We don't.
Dude, there's so many pressures in this world, man. And that's why I like this kind of vulnerability and honesty and just like ways of just sharing the burden, I guess. And just kind of being like, hey, it's okay. We're all figuring it out, right? It's important. And
we need each other.
We need each other, man. And not to like be hiding behind social media. When I'm like, look, I tell people like social media is like, that's just where I curated like this body of work, right? Real life is where you get me. So come meet me and be present. You know what I mean? That's where you get me and like stuff like that. So it's like, so, you know, now is about just kind of like this weekend where, you know, I had friends that, you know, like I said, friends that got married, and that was cool. Just I'm supposed to be in New Zealand, by the way.
How are you supposed to be in New Zealand right now and you are in Austin, Texas, talking with me? I'm upset.
You should be honored.
That's fine. No. I'm honored, actually. So.
No, but you know, my friend found these tickets and they were cheap, and like I was gonna go and we were gonna go do it, and it was great. I really wanted to go have this very in nature. You know, New Zealand is just like beautiful and lush, right? And just kind of appreciate something simple, right? But here I am, you know, chose to stay for these weddings, and it was great to really just connect with these friends that I went to college with, right? And you know, we're like 8-9 years out of college now, and people have gone on and had, you know, jobs, and people have gotten married, and people have had kids. Only like one of us really had kids, and even like that was a challenge for them too, because they lost their, you know, the first time they their child, the first time they were having a kid.
Sorry to hear about that.
So there's a lot of life is complicated, man, and yet you'll meet these people and they'll smile and they'll be happy and whatnot, and you know, and we all have our levels of comfort and vulnerability and whatnot. But it was important just to kind of have those. I mean, we danced, man. We're African. It was an African community, so it was. I mean, this weekend was lit. Okay, I cannot stop talking about it because it meant so much. I love dancing, and being able to be with my friends and just like we like being around each other. We're not doing anything but just hovering around. Which is kind of, I guess, a crime in the United States if you're black, but side note. Yeah. But that's all we really do. We just enjoy each other's company because there's all these inside jokes that go on. You know, we talk about, it's like it's a form of therapy, you know?
Right. It is. You
know, we talk about like really what's going on. And this weekend was great, you know, like one of my friends, she's like, hey, you know, like I just moved and I don't like my job, so I quit. And she's asking me all these questions you're asking me. And you realize that like a lot of what you do is not just for you. It's for other people too, to help figure out. It's like parts of the puzzle that we present to one another. Be like, hey, this is what happened when I tried to do this thing. I don't know if it's helpful for you. Here you go, take it and run with it. It's this complicated Rubik's cube, you know? And so, man, I was just, I don't know, and celebrating my friends, their marriage and all that stuff was just great, just to have those moments of honesty and fun too at the same time, you know, as we all kind of like are now, you know, going to this phase of our life where a lot of us are at 30 or approaching 30, and we're sharing information with one another. Like one of my friends, you know, he was a lawyer and now he's doing like real estate investments, and so, translation of skills and all this stuff. So it's really cool. So right now, and another reason why I stay, because I was like, there's projects that I want to do that are like my own truths, right? Not that I need to be the face of it or anything like that. Some, yeah, because it's just like artistic, and expression. But some like, oh, I want to like create this voice, because a lot of people are going through these like similar things too. Especially around like migration, home, and what does all this mean? So those are things I really want to put forth, in proposals, submitting them, putting them out there. So if anyone's willing to fund the brother or support a brother in these endeavors, let me know. But they mean a lot to me, and I don't have to, like I said, I don't have to pretend to be anything else when I'm doing these projects, because they're just me. They're my experiences. I've noticed that a lot of people have always also experienced that, and also hopefully they challenge people too, right? And that's the thing. I think also in your art, you have to challenge people, and sometimes you have to present more questions than answers, to where people start to scratch their heads. We're like, huh? Like, what does that even mean? Like, what is he even talking about? Because sometimes you say something, people don't really hear you until later on. It's like when you listen to a song when you're like 15, you're like, oh, this song is great. Then you hear that thing when you're 30, like, yo, oh my gosh.
That happens to me too often.
Yo, that's what they were really talking about. Because now you're the age in which that song, that time, and when that person wrote that, or you've come across that experience, you're like, I relate so much more differently, right? And that's kind of the beauty about art or music or just things like that are expressive. It's like this. They have their own evolution. They don't stop. They're not just. It's not just a gem for now. They're actually more timeless than we imagine, and that's the beauty of it. Because you can look at them like, oh, I don't get this painting, whatever. I don't know what it means, but the evolution of it is where the beauty is, and that's where our beauty is too, in our process. Knowing that we're gonna fall, we're gonna fail, we're gonna succeed, we're gonna learn. Like that should be what we strive for at the end of the day.
Right.
Constantly.
Right. Man, that's powerful, man. And man, Moyo, I want to thank you for being just a positive representation and a wealth of information for me and for many listeners right now. What are some ways that people can get in contact with you moving forward?
Here's my phone number. Just kidding.
I was about to say, you're pretty bold out here in the streets.
Nah, man. Most immediately the gram, at Moyo3K.
MOYO
3K. You could also there's a link to my portfolio in there if you want to check it out. Also check out Arts in Context. It's on KLRU here in Austin, or like any one of your PBS stations. The episode is Home. So if you just search my name, you should be able to come across that. I don't know. Watch my Insta stories.
Because I'm
always doing random things at like 3 a.m. And I'm always at Home Depot.
There it is.
Yeah, and honestly, like, if you listen to this, like, let's grab coffee. Like, I think let's make it real. That's another thing. Let's make it real.
Well, you're awesome, sir. I appreciate you being on the show, man.
Thank you for doing this. Really appreciate it. You're doing it for the culture, for real. Yeah,
appreciate that, man.
This concludes our episode of Africa and Us. Thank you for listening. Be sure to share the episode and follow the journey on social media with me at Nate Araya. Be encouraged.